Hi, everybody. I'm back again. Yeah, and thank you, everybody who tuned in yesterday. Uh, I'm going to be reading some more tonight, of course. But for those of you who are new to the channel, new to my streams, I am currently reading my dad's novels because he can't. Um, and what I'm doing is I'm just reading through this one story. And for those of you who weren't here yesterday, I actually started on chapter 2. And there's a saying that a lot of times you can just cut out chapter 1. And I think for the most part, for this story, they are very correct. I didn't really lose a lot. I think they were just building up what more about what it was. But even still, in the second chapter, they describe what Ethan's job is. So it's really, I don't know what was in that first chapter, but so far I am not missing it at all. So a lot of it's explained in the second chapter, which leads me to believe there was a redundancy that didn't need to be there, and so there's a reason why there's not a first chapter. um, if it gets worse later on, like there's some sort of integral thing, I will go back and backtrack and try and piece it together. But so far, it's fine. Um, yeah, and I hope everybody else felt the same way. If not, let me know by any means necessary. I Yeah, I have a hard time being able to actually interact directly while I'm talking right now because I'm usually reading, so I can't just look up and try it. And especially on Twitch because of the way I have Twitch streaming, because the way I'm streaming on Twitch, aka it's not easily accessible. Let's just leave it at that. Whereas YouTube is fine, but there's not really anybody who is who has been commenting, so it's fine. Um, anyway, neither here nor there. Um, without further ado, though, I'm just going to pop into the story because I thought I had more interesting things to say, and I really don't. Uh, but maybe I'll have some more things to say after I'm done these 2 chapters because I'm going to read 2 chapters again tonight. Again, they're very small, so it won't take long. I have a feeling what'll end up happening is somewhere down the road, I will be embellishing the story and I'll be retelling it to you at a later date once it's complete, once it's fleshed out a bit more. Anyway, without further ado, chapters 4 and 5, or 3 and 4. Anyway, you slice it. Here you go. 10 bandits against 2 men and a dog, and only one of the men having a sword. Well, at least they could see to it that not all the bandits lived to enjoy their victory. Ethan looked, ar- Ethan looked around. Oh my goodness, hold on here. Ethan looked around the hut for something, anything, to give them a little advantage. Sun's light, what have I been thinking of anyway? He saw Duna glancing at him, but there was no time to explain. He sought his saddlebags, from which he pulled the shoes. As he put them on, the farmer stared. With bandits outside, you take the time first to put on shoes? You should don your mail. Ethan shot him a quick grin. I will do that too, if I have the time. But for now, speed is essential. Do you keep your eye on those outside? Oh my goodness. Okay, hold on here. on those outside with the dog barking. Sorry, with the dog barking, they may decide to hurry their attack. And so it proved. No sooner had Duna put his eye to the spy hole when he hissed at Ethan. They come! Ethan had just finished fastening his second shoe. He stood, sword in hand, and went to the door. Close it and bolt it after me, Duna, he said. Then, before Duna could do more than make gobbling sounds of protest, the deputy had thrown down the bar, opened the door, and slipped out. Seeing him, the two men coming toward the door paused for a moment, hefting their swords in their hands, and advanced again. Ethan ran, suddenly angling off away from the two, who began to turn to head him off. He could see the startled looks on their faces, and he was himself surprised at his speed. He ran in a curve, and they continued to turn to face him. His speed enabled him to come at them in such a way as to attack one of them at a time. His fleetness of foot had unnerved them somewhat, for the first one barely parried Ethan's first blow, and the second sweep of the deputy's sword cut him down. The other turned to flee, but was not nearly quick enough to escape Ethan, who caught and slew him in a few steps. Ethan turned back toward the house where the men were converging on the door, two of them bearing axes. As he came, he saw two more at the byre, opening the doors to run off the cattle. In an instant, Ethan turned toward the latter. The door of the house would keep the others busy for a little, and even if they broke it before he could get there, Duna could hold him for a little while longer. In the meantime, best he should save Duna's cattle. The bandits at the byre heard his coming and turned to meet him, but by that time they were too late. The first went down before Ethan's first blow, and the second barely managed to interpose his own sword between himself and Ethan's fiercely hewing blade. They settled to fencing for a bit. The man was quick, but he handled his sword clumsily. A few minutes later, the fight was also over, and Ethan ran for the door of the house. With all their shouting and hacking at the door, the bandits did not hear Ethan coming at all. He struck down two of them and jumped back. By now, knowing he was amongst them, they turned to fight. The shoes, however, lent to Ethan's feet a quickness which enabled him to dash in and out among them, giving a cut here and a thrust there. He did not kill any more of them, but they soon began to flee, scattering in all directions. He now had time to mark the large, bald man among the fugitives, but he had no wind left for pursuit. He stood still, leaning on his sword, and breathed heavily for a moment or two. Duna swung the door open and called, "Ethan, are you wounded?" "No, only winded." The farmer stepped out to Ethan's side. "And well you might be. You move so fast that at times I could scarce see you. What magic is this?" Ethan hesitated, but the farmer had made a good guess, and to say nothing would only make matters worse. "A gift from those within the hills. These shoes, you see, they make one fleet of foot." Duna nodded, his expression carefully blank. "A goodly gift, and useful as well, it would seem." "Aye, so it would seem. Let us see all these here are indeed dead, and go back again to our rest." "Aye." They inspected the fallen, who were indeed dead, and took all the weapons, which they carried back to the house. Duna was silent, but it was clear he was struggling with a problem. Ethan thought it best to deal straight away with the matter. "Duna, you are unhappy with the shoes, that they are magical works of the fair folk of the hills." Duna looked up carefully. "Yes, I am. I am also aware that without you, my family would now be dead, and the house and barn burned. Were it only the magical shoes, I would ask that you leave my house. But how can I cast you out, who saved me and all I have?" Ethan shrugged. We mistrust that which we do not know. But I assure you, I am the same man who went into the hills. I was not changed by staying the night there. And the use of the gift given me by the folk of the hills has not made me different either. They sat for a while in silence, and though it was clear that Duna's mind was not completely at rest, he was at least able to relax himself a little. In the morning, after he helped Duna dig a pit and haul the bandits out to it, Ethan saddled Priyan and rode out, following once more the track he'd been riding when his first encounter with the bandits had delayed him. Okay, chapter 5. Alphabrius was only a small town. It had once been larger, but the sweep of the Camartha out of the great wild had wiped out those who dared to stay. Many of those who had fled had not had the heart to return, or had met better or worse fortune elsewhere, and therefore would not or could not return. The Camartha had destroyed the town, but much of it had been rebuilt by the people who returned. Some of the houses were quite well constructed with lumber salvaged from the deserted but not completely burnt buildings. Others were mere huts, built by putting together what sticks could be found, many of them charred with fire and patching up cracks as they were noticed. Freythor, the magistrate, held his position by happenstance. He had been magistrate of the small village a little to the east, where the people had been unaware until too late just how close the barbarians were. There was nothing there to return to. Freythor, however, had been in Alphabrius that day and had joined the citizens when they fled from the Camartha. The magistrate of Alphabrius had died in that fight, when his heart had given out under the strain. Freythor stayed with the people of Alphabrius, by skillful argument, convincing many to stay together, despite their trials and difficulties. Having no authority whatsoever among the citizens of Alphabrius, it was a tribute to his powers of persuasion that he managed to bring so many of them with him. When the war ended, he went back with them to help refound their city. By virtue of his position in his home village and his service to the citizens of Alphabrius in their exile, he was chosen to be magistrate. He was a fussy little man, and the look of him said that he had been used to being well kept, though the recent hard times had melted off a good deal of his usual fat. Toward citizens of the town and toward ordinary travelers, he tended to be a little overbearing. The warrant of a king's deputy gave superior authority to that of a magistrate, however, and he was almost fawning over Ethan. Welcome to our humble town, deputy. What brings you here? You are passing through, seeking after bandits? No, just passing through. It has come to my knowledge that this area is infested with bandits, and I am giving thought as to how to get rid of them. Bandits, deputy? Surely they will not stay when a king's deputy is near. Surely they will be away to far haunts, far from your presence. Surely. Ethan was a little too worried to accept all this politely. Light of the sun in heaven, man, will you stand up and cease to play the worm? I am a king's deputy, but that only means a man bearing a special paper, sworn to a special purpose. It does not make me a hero of the old days, who slays hundreds by a mere sound of his voice. He went on, a little more calmly. There are bandits in this neighborhood, but there is one band particularly, led by a bald man, who I am told has previously passed himself off as a deputy. I have encountered and slain some of this band, but I wish to remain in the area for a time to see if I may destroy them altogether. I shall need lodgings for at least 1 week, very likely for longer. At the risk of telling you your business, magistrate, I suggest the cost be spread out amongst the better off citizens of the town. Yes, yes, of course, deputy. Let me see. Yes, you could stay with Kermis, the grain merchant, for a few days. A week, say. Then we will move you on to. Never mind that. Let us first get you quartered. I will consult later with the other chief citizens and inform you as to who will be responsible for your upkeep next week. So it went. A few of the citizens who had been supporting themselves with with pelty, oh boy, petty pilfering, were much against the idea of the deputy among them. Some did not care, one way or another. The better off citizens were divided in their own minds. On the one hand, they disliked the notion of having to keep him and his horse on the other. Sorry, and his horse. On the other, they hoped that his presence would lead to a lessening of the bandit depredations which were costing them dearly. He managed to learn that the bald man was most likely a man named Moel, of uncertain background, who apparently gathered together a number of other men of his own sort, contemptuous of the law. Many probably many had probably been men of worth before the Kamratha had come, and now lived as bandits for lack of desire to do anything else. Ethan first spent some days acquainting himself with the town and of the town some of the townspeople. By the third day, he discovered who were the men in town most likely to be able to give him the assistance he needed. There were two in particular whom he deemed to approach first. One was a lanky blond fellow named Glass, while the other, Ty, Tywell, was dark and stocky, both younger sons of local landowners. In these hard times, however, birth and position counted for little, and both had had to take their places in the fields and sowing and harvest, or in sheep byres at lambing time. Both wore swords, and both were very much aware of how imperfect was their skill with those weapons. Ethan sought his chance, and came upon the two drinking ale at the inn one afternoon. He approached and sat down at the table with them, the two heads lifted as one, casting a disapproving glance at the intruder. Their expressions changed suddenly when they recognized him, shifting to a blank wariness. I am Athenbraugh's son, deputy of the king of Serenigos, as I expect you know. I am Tywell, son of Davador. I am Glass, son of Planor. Both of you know about the bandits who are plaguing this neighborhood. As a deputy, it is my duty to hunt them down and to stop them. As you can appreciate, being a man alone, this is difficult to do. I need men who will help me, who will be aware of the dangers and difficulties of the task, but will not shirk from but not shirk from them. I have had my eye on the two of you for a little while. for some little while. And I dare to hope that you will, sorry, bear with me here. And I dare to hope that you'll be willing to offer your services. What is it you'd be wishing us to do? Asked Glass, so quickly that Ethan was sure he had what he wanted. Be ready to ride out with me when I need your service. Be ready to take it upon yourselves to uphold the king's laws wherever you see them being breached. Be willing to face danger and discomfort without shirking. Where do we be a riding? Ah, where do we ride? This was from Tywell, with his hand on his sword hilt already, as though Moel and his bandits were just outside the door of the inn. We do not ride anywhere just yet. It would be a waste of our time to be riding all over the land with no real idea where the bandits are or may be. When they make an attack, we will go out to see if we can find them, or trail them to where they have their lair. Besides that, it will be necessary for each of you to gain the permission of your fathers to take on this duty. If you wish, I can go make a specific request for your services. Oh no, said Tywell hastily. I will talk to to my father, that is, and I to mine. The two were doing their best to hide their rustic manner of speech, and Ethan did his best to seem as though he were not noticing it. He remembered too well how aware he himself had been of such things at their age, though that was a long time ago, before the war with the Kimmeratha. It might be as well if we were to have a regular sword practice also. When we meet them, we are going to need all our fighting skills. Both were quite in agreement with this, since it would give them a chance to learn the handling of the weapons of which they were so proud. Then, if you will meet me here again tomorrow, having sought the permission of your fathers, we shall begin. The two were ready and waiting the next morning. He spent an hour with them in sword practice, being careful not to step on their pride and make it clear just how poorly they handled their weapons. Afterwards, he leaned on his sword and spoke to them. Good enough for today. Get your horses and prepare to ride immediately. They were immediately excited, though they tried not to let it show. They expected to be led out to do battle with the bandits immediately. Instead, he led them out to Duna's farm in an attempt to follow down the admittedly cold trail. Glass had the habit of sliding his sword in and out of his scabbard to the length of about 4 inches, muttering such things as riding about and looking for weak old tracks in the dirt. Great work, this. And the bones of my backside are worn down at least an inch. Tywell, of dark of hair and mood, said nothing, only rode on behind, looking constantly morose. The next morning, after Ethan had given the two another sword lesson, a young man came galloping in. He rode a sweaty pony and was shouting as he came, Bandits! Bandits! Help! Bandits be attacking the farm! Attacking. It's probably attacking. But there we go. Yeah, and you're expecting me to save more? No. That's actually it. Yep, I leave off on a cliffhanger. It's not as cliffhangery as the saga of Harem, but it's still a little cliffhangery. We'll see how it gets as we go along. Um, it's a very rough draft. I know that I'm positive that it was at one point there was more of it. The problem is that as he got older, he got more disenchanted and more upset about his stories not being published. So he started tossing stuff. So there was a fuller manuscript of this. I remember that. But now I have this and I need to rebuild it. So the fact that there is most of a manuscript here and it's just like been pared down just means I need to expand it. And that's all. It's a challenge. It's our creative challenge. So I'll be reading some more of it tomorrow and we'll see how it goes. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in and I will talk to you all again tomorrow. So good night, everybody.